bruv. We are. We are. We are. The birth of a nation. No, it's the youth of a nation, isn't it? Chapter 12. Control V. 12. 12. The Keanes. The world of Keane. I'm a keen observer, bruv. Keen observer. Change. The fuck? The World of Keane. By Walter Keane. We've just left one of the most disturbing chapters I've ever read in a book. And, yeah. Him depicting child. The World of Keane. Let's put a Keane little book underneath there, bruv. Now we're going to go with Uncle Vampire. Just because it's a disgusting book. The World of Keane. Where's my damn clock? Oh, man. Chapter 12. No, I don't think we need a smaller one, actually. Need a smaller one, bruv. Look at that for a second. There we go. There we go. Cheerio, bruv. Cheerio. 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 Right, chapter 12. Another crisis, bruv. Just another tricky day, bruv. Chapter 12. Another crisis. I am not quite sure how I arrived in San Francisco. Sometime during the lengthy flight, I distinctly heard grandmother's voice reminded me that I was a survivor by nature. There have been times when her voice was so clear to me that I frantically searched for her physical presence nearby. I do not see her, but I know that she is there. In retrospect, I realize that I most often resurrect her guidance when an important decision must be made, or when I am in the throes of an emotional crisis. Having just lost Colette, I could envision no worse catastrophe. Little did I know how near the next crisis was. Grandmother must have realized it, though, for her consolation was a kind of warning. You have made it through problems much worse than this, my little Walter, and you will triumph now and later as well. Upon arriving in Sausalito, I decided to rest and unwind for a few days before visiting Barbara and Susan. Jesus Christ, this guy has no ends to his just baseness. I did not want to subject them to my exhaustion and my obvious sadness. Also, I secretly harbored the hope that things between Barbara and me might be better. After all those years, I was naive enough to believe that Barbara might make room in her professionally brilliant life for me. Of course, I never stopped to realize that my wanderings in the name of the waifs had excluded her from mine. You think you only abandon her and your child? I don't know why she would just say, "Hey, Walter, come on, Bubby." I mean, he was the most handsome man that ever lived. So, like all the first nights back home, my initial evening with Barbara and Susan began joyfully. What do you got, bruv? Not having a key, I rang the front doorbell. Barbara answered, threw her arms around me, and kissed me while Susan pulled on my trouser leg. I lifted her up, carried her to the rocking chair my grandmother had given me, and rocked her back and forth. We laughed and sang together while Barbara played her cello. Within 10 minutes, Sylvia had brought in a tray of chilled wine, 2 glasses, and some orange juice for Susan. She too welcomed me home with an embrace and announced dinner would be served in about half an hour. We chatted and sipped our beverage before proceeding to the dining room. Barbara gave the blessing at the table, ending with, "Thank you, Father, for Walter's safe return." After dinner and more conversation, Susan began showing me the paintings that she had done. She was totally engrossed in her explanations to me of her artistic endeavors. I admired her dedication to the task and enthusiastically praised her efforts. Susan painted in the colors and the emotion one would find in a Rembrandt or Velasquez. Much later in the evening, Susan disappeared for about 10 minutes and then reappeared in her fanciest nightie. I rocked her quietly to sleep and carried her to bed. As I tucked her in, she reached out and wrapped her arms around my neck. She whispered, "Daddy, I love you. I'll come and get in bed with you in the morning. I'm so glad you are home." Standing in the doorway, Barbara called, "Good night, darling." She explained she had studying to do. "What are your plans?" "No immediate plans," I responded. She said, "In the dresser drawer are some pajamas and a box of mail for you. In a period of 2 months, 3 letters and a recent cable arrived from your London art dealer." She asked if I had stopped in to see him in London on my way to California. "No, I came directly from Paris." Walter, when and when an prominent art dealer writes 3 letters and sends a cable, it must be important. I have several hours of studying and must get to it. I suggest you get into that mail and answer it. "Tomorrow will do," I responded. "First, for now, I'll have a shower and sleep." As on previous occasions, my illusions that our marital relationship could change were destroyed. I resolved to spare myself any more disappointment and to devote my energies to my daughter and my work. Susie and I painted together, had picnics in the Berkeley Hills overlooking San Francisco, rode our bicycles, and played together in the garden. By the spring of 1953, I realized that I could postpone no longer my meeting with the art dealer in London and Paris. Barbara promised that she and Susie would join me in Europe during summer vacation. After 6 weeks in Paris, I flew to London, having timed my visit to coincide with the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. I prepared extensive photographic equipment for the special event. On June 2nd, I assembled my Hasselblad and Nikon cameras with a fisheye lens, a 200 millimeter lens, and a portrait lens, which, when focused on Her Majesty, would be able to count her eyelashes. I had a ladder rigged up to hold the cameras and other accessories. Just as I was halfway up the ladder to shoot the first picture, plainclothesmen pulled the equipment and me off. "Just what are you doing here?" one of the men asked. "There is no clearance order saying that a photographer with a ladder may be on this street." I explained that I was there to take pictures of the coronation. "Let us see your press pass, your permit from Scotland Yard with photo attached, your mission, a description of your equipment, and your location of operation," he demanded. When I answered that everyone had cameras for the coronation, his curt reply was, "No one else has a ladder. Yours provides a perfect spot to take a shot at someone. At the moment, I was perturbed at what seemed to be excessive security measures. Reflecting now upon on the incident, I recognize how far-sighted the British officials were. Had there been similar efforts by other governments, perhaps some of the assassinations of world leaders during the past 30 years might have been foiled. Luckily for me, I was able to get a clearance through my friend, Tom Curran, then head of the United Press International. This was expedited by one of the British inspectors, who made several calls, including one to my good friend Edward St. George, whose flat I was occupying during my stay in London. I hurried back to my ladder. By this time, the colorful parade was already moving by, although the important dignitaries had not yet passed. London was jubilant. Many British subjects and visitors had been camping out on the streets for days prior to the coronation. When Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth arrived, she moved slowly and waved to the anxious spectators. She was greeted with cheers. Long live the Queen! Applause rang out from the excited crowd only a few feet away from the procession. It was one of the most memorable days of my life. The festive mood continued into and through the night. Several artists from Soho, some lovely young girls on holiday, and I made the rounds of the pubs and tourist attractions. After many drinks, we moved the party back to St. George's flat, as he was staying somewhere else in the city. I felt comfortable bringing my companions to his home at 1 o'clock in the morning. Edgar, one of my artist friends, was inspired by the studio atmosphere of the flat and suggested that we all paint. Fine, I responded laughingly. How about the bathroom walls? Everyone agreed. I brought out my paint box and brushes, 3 palettes, and 2 additional plates to use as palettes. For the next 3 hours, each artist painted on one of the bathroom walls. Edgar had his girlfriend, Jenny, standing nude in the doorway. He painted her torso on the wall, then he drew her fanny as if she were sitting on the toilet, with legs painted on the lower half of the toilet, and her feet painted on the floor. Charles, another artist, was fascinated by Jenny's body and portrayed her as though she were lying down in the bathtub. Using Roberta, a charming Scotch visitor, as my model, I painted her as a lost child in a long, dark alleyway. When the wall was completed, I titled the mural Child of Darkness. The remaining walls were decorated by a seascape with seagulls flying about and by a laughing clown. Our painting party lasted well into the daylight of the next day. 2 or 3 days later, Edward St. George telephoned me to say he would stop by the flat to get fresh clothing. He suggested we have lunch, and I agreed. Actually, my heart quaked at the thought of his reaction of the bathroom. Of course, I planned to repaint it for him. He arrived, and we went to a little Italian restaurant on King's Road. When we returned to the flat, I said I had something to show him. Leading him to the closed bathroom door, I explained, I had a few artist friends in the other night. We did something in here. If you don't like it, I'll change it immediately. Edward opened the door to the bathroom. Oh my God, this is absolutely magnificent. This is wonderful, he exclaimed. I gulped. You mean you don't want me to paint over it and restore the room to normal? Hell no, he fairly roared. I'm going to have all my friends in to see this. He went on to praise the creativity of the painting, which remained on the bathroom walls until the building was demolished 8 years later. As I surveyed the spontaneous artistry of the bathroom that day, I realized that even a beautiful woman became a winsome waif through my eyes. Using Roberta's face, I transferred her figure to the slim, girlish form of a child. I had completely ignored the nude body of Jenny, Edgar's model. Once and for all, I recognized the depth of my commitment to the lost children. Kind of sounds like you got a commitment to young kids, you weirdo. The trip to New York was to have been a short one. After 2 luncheons and a dinner with my art dealer, I was preparing to return to Paris when I had a sudden urge to do a painting in Washington Square. It was Saturday morning. The shadows changed as the bright sun broke through. I had 2 paintings of my sad-eyed children leaning against my easel when they could be viewed and or purchased. A slight glance to my right was a tall woman. She spoke in a near familiar voice. I have been watching your every brushstroke. I like your paintings. I looked directly into her eyes and was captivated by her total elegance. I shouted, Eileen, it's you! She threw her arms around me, pulling me to her body, and kissed me. I held my arms straight out so as not to get any paint on her lovely blue silk pants with a matching blouse, open to reveal her beautiful protruding breasts. Her proud carriage I remembered so well. Looking into her large, expressive eyes, I asked, Where did you come from? She laughed softly. I share an apartment with a girlfriend 5 blocks from here. Really? I live only 1 block. It's a bit early for lunch. How about a coffee? She answered with a smile and offered to help me pack up my gear. We walked to my hotel where I changed into something a little more presentable while she studied my latest paintings. Coffee drifted into lunch. It was a glorious day. We had an outside table at the tavern on the green in Central Park. New Yorkers were out en masse, walking with their children or dogs. She spoke, You haven't asked me what I'm doing in New York. It has been so long since I've seen you. I thought by now you would be happily married and have a beautiful child. She laughed, still single. I work as a freelance model. I have an agent. He gets me some top jobs. When I'm not working, I frequently spend my free time in museums and art galleries. So, which museum today? I questioned. She took my hand in hers and said, Oh, Walter, the beautiful times we shared, and here we are in New York. I love it. Now, to answer your question, there is a new exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. We can walk there from here. It was close to 5 o'clock when she emerged from the museum. I asked her what her plans were for tonight. She smiled. I know you like jazz. Yes, I replied. Eileen, with you I like everything. Sounds like a date. Pick me up at 8. That night extended my stay in New York by 11 days. 1,000 days had passed since we had a night together. I don't even remember this woman, if you want me to be honest here. This New York night of jazz, booze, and dancing was wild. We ended up at my hotel suite about 2:30 a.m. I walked to the closet to hang up my jacket. Eileen, having kicked off her shoes, called out, Shall we shower together? Eileen came by and modeled for me many evenings and the weekend. I did 2 paintings of her. On my next to last night, we returned to my hotel after seeing our second Broadway musical. A great night of food, fun, laughter, and love. She continued to model for me until the painting was done. She was so moved by the portrait of herself as a waif that she insisted upon calling her roommate at that moment and to inquire if her agent had called. Walter's painting of me as a child is completed. I love it. I look so sad and thin and lost. But here and now, as I see the painting, I am experiencing something very strange. I feel like the lonely child in the picture. When I look at it, I am again a child. Walter has captured me 20 years ago. He has seen through the adult and found the young girl. That's what I'm pretty sure what he wants to do. With Eileen's revelation to her roommate, I made 2 promises to myself. First, that I would never again deviate from my mission of capturing the lost children or the lost child in every one of us. And second, that I would establish some kind of permanent base in New York. When Eileen hung up the phone, she threw her arms around me in joy. My darling Eileen, I said, the finished painting of you is yours forever. You have crystallized an aspect of my work unclear even to me before now. Ecstatic about the painting, she hugged me again and offered to help locate a place for my New York headquarters. Within the next few days, I acquired a large apartment at the Wyndham Hotel on 58th Street between 5th and 5th Street. Is that really a thing? 5th and 5th Street? And I set up a studio. Henceforth, whenever I came to New York, Eileen stayed with and modeled for me. Often she also prepared a little dinner while I worked at my easel. She was tireless and frequently posed for 2 or 3 hours in the evening after a long day's work. Again, I was fortunate enough to have a woman who gave me roots in a place I needed to be. It's very nice of her. Just a lovely woman. As I knew that Barbara and Susie were counting on a summer trip to Paris, I returned to France to prepare for their arrival. Several weeks later, I met them at Orly Airport. Susan rushed into my arms, filled with excitement. She sat on my lap all the way to the apartment. She had slept well on the flight, fresh and full of joy. She talked all the way into the city. Susan was the first to enter the apartment. She began shouting at once, "Oh, Daddy, there are roses everywhere in the entrance hall, in the living room, on the dining room table, even in the kitchen and our bedrooms. In the bathroom, she closed the door only to open it quickly again and hollering, and roses in here too." Barbara needed the sleep. Susan and I went for a walk. I tried to carry her everywhere. She refused, saying, "Daddy, I'm a big girl now." Susan had just completed 1.5 years at the University of California Experimental School for Exceptional Children. In 6 months, she would enter John Muir Elementary School in Berkeley. On the second day in Paris, Barbara enrolled in school. Her mornings would be occupied with classes. In the afternoon, she worked as a designer in a couturier, couture house until 7 o'clock in the evening. Susan spent her days with me. When we were not in museums or buying tickets for a ballet, we were at Montmartre studio, where we painted at the Place des Terres. Susan had her own easel and paint box and felt grown up among many of the artists whom she remembered from other trips. She found our regular table at La Catherine's restaurant and was sitting down when Jacques, the waiter, approached her, saying, "Welcome back to Paris, sweet Suzanne. Excuse me for a few minutes. I have something for you." He returned with a dish of 5 escargots and a glass of orange juice. "Little lady, I remember you like them." Put her arm Susan thanked Jacques, put her arms around him, and kissed his cheek. Quickly pulling back, she said, "Monsieur Jacques, you need to shave." Susan, with her blonde hair, blue eyes, vivacious personality, and joyful laughter, brought smiles and happiness everywhere we went. 4 days together were filled with activities. Now that she was 4.5 years old, Susan seemed almost grown up to me. I realized that during my long absence from her, she was making quantum leaps in her development. I vowed to myself that I would make effort to be with her for more extended periods of time so that I would not miss so much. During those days in Paris, Barbara was totally occupied. She did not return home until 8 o'clock and usually very tired from a long day. By that time, Susan had eaten her dinner and gone to bed. Although we often shared our experiences over the supper I had prepared, Barbara and I continued to communicate as brother and sister rather than husband and wife, trying not to compare our evenings together with the intimate dinners I had enjoyed with Colette and Renee. I found myself missing them and our 3-minute performances more and more. Still, I resolved to keep things intact as much as possible with Barbara for Susan's sake. In September of 1953, I returned to California with my wife and daughter. More than ever, Barbara and I lived our separate lives. We were in love with our careers, but not with each other. Our one mutual interest and tie was Susan. Both of us showered her with attention and affection to compensate for the lack of emotion between us. Milestones such as Susan's first day of school in January of 1954 were special events. Barbara, or Grendel, our boxer dog, and I walked Susan to school. Grendel stayed at her right heel all the way. After I had taken 32 photographs of the occasion, even Barbara had to ask, "Aren't you overdoing it a bit?" I replied, Susan has only one first day of school. Thereafter, either Barbara or I personally escorted Susan to the door of her classroom. At dismissal time, one of us was always there to meet her. Of course, Grendel was part of the ritual. Every afternoon, the faithful dog sat patiently beside the door, waiting for the bell to ring. So we continued our frenetic professional lives and our dedication to Susan until one Sunday morning. At breakfast, Barbara asked me whether I would mind if we were not married. Momentarily speechless, I could only shrug my shoulders. What kind of reply is that? She said. Words that came from my lips. If that will make you happy. As though overjoyed, she said, we can get a divorce. My heart beat furiously at the thought, realizing what difficulties our many separations had caused. I was tempted to say that I needed some time to get my thoughts together. There was a dignity in our world together. I was always proud to introduce her to my friends. She was a most gracious hostess at our parties. My anguish was almost unbearable. There were times when I felt this beautiful world I lived in and the happiness I had experienced could be enough for me, all that I needed. Now I knew only that I did not want it to end. With Susan, I was instinctively generous, loyal. No, you weren't. You were fucking all kinds of chicks, according to your memoir, anyway. And as affectionate as her boxer Grandel. But what of Barbara's needs? Had I been meeting them? Had she met my needs and wants? Was this my penalty for the months and years I roamed the world painting my lost children? Was the dissolution of our marriage the price I had to pay? I had enjoyed the best of two worlds, my painting and independence, my family and home life. Can't tell if this guy's fucking a comedian or what. Knowing others had coped with such problems, I got up from the breakfast table and telephoned our attorney. Shattered, befuddled, mentally uncertain, I asked him to come to our home. On Friday, after an agonizing week, the case was filed. I went to Jack LaLanne's gym and worked out. While I was having a massage, Jack said, Walter, perhaps that gracious society lady was just too much for an artist. I headed for the showers where I called out, Grandmother, what now? A thought flashed through me like a sharp pain. I am alone. As though Grandmother were at the helm of my ship, guiding and directing me, she steered me to Sausalito and my barge. The creation of my painting alone embedded as firmly embedded in my mind. After a few sketches, the night passed and the sun came through the open area. The large 4 foot by 5 foot canvas was in progress. 3 weeks went by. During that time, I spoke with Susan twice. I could face no one else. I felt shut in on all sides. Days passed without food or drink. The completion of Alone represents a turning point in my life. There it is. It is the artistic expression of the painter's destiny and his dilemma. The necessity of solitude, coupled with the inevitable loneliness it brings, are basic ingredients in the creative process. I had attempted to achieve a balance between the endemic isolation of the artist's profession and the intrinsic needs of my social nature. I had failed. What I had discovered was an innate ability to portray these feelings in the painting of a child. Here is my symbol of humanity, alone, with infinity, but in the company of the always here and the constantly now. The child represents the isolation and, what's that say? Dresses? I don't know what the hell that is. Dresses of humankind as she perches precariously on the vast stairs of life. The distant side of the stairs is the brink of the universe. The new side, in muddy reflection, is the edge of the abyss of human degradation. The spheres in the beyond draw us irresistibly by gravitational forces, pulling us back through the eyes of the child, which are but sights into the blue-black of space and time. The artist cannot change the world, but he can enlighten through his discoveries in his creativity, portraying his understanding of people. What you believe in and what you have done is what matters. As I reflect on the past 10 years from Berlin to Berkeley and every place in between, I realized that I had unconsciously made a decision about my life's purpose. One's real priorities are finally determined not by his intentions, but by actions. Had I really wanted to be a family man, I would have stayed in a single place where roots and relationships could flourish. Instead, I had remained continually on the wing, even when intimacies had been the most profoundly satisfying. In retrospect, the choice I had made seemed obvious. Was my eternal romance to be with a palette and a brush? Would art forever be my only real love? There he is. Is that with what's her name? Natalie Wood? Yeah. All right, we're done with chapter 12. See how many pages chapter 13 is. If it's short, I'll read it. If not, it might be short enough. What are we at? 31 minutes? It's only 1 o'clock in the morning. 102. So that's like 7 pages. I think I can do it. I think I can, bruv. Chapter 13, Fame. Must add this. Chapters 12 through 13. Okay, bruv. Well, the train's going to join me. Chapter 13, Fame. If one is driven by nature, he finds temporary solace and release from personal crisis in more work. Having failed in my marriage and in the only other intense emotional involvement of my life, I was determined to devote myself totally to painting. For the moment, I was resigned to the fact that family life and the permanence of place and persons of which it consists were not for me. Of course, Susan, my daughter, continued to be of paramount concern. I was grateful to Barbara for being the fine mother that she was, and also for the liberal visitation rights granted to me in the divorce decree. Business was good. From San Francisco to New York to Paris, the wide eyed waifs were recognized as uniquely mine. Political leaders, film and radio stars, as well as curators of prominent museums, began purchasing paintings of my lost children. Without realizing when or how I had become famous, the wine flowed freely and the money followed close behind. During the first year after our divorce, I made 3 trips to New York, where I saw Eileen and worked in my new studio. Since Eileen was fond of jazz, she and I visited the best clubs of Greenwich Village, Condon's, Nick's, and Ryan's. After midnight, we often went to P.J. Clark's on 3rd Avenue at 55th Street for a nightcap. The show crowd drifted in and out. Eileen and I began to meet some of the newspaper and theater personalities of the city. Dorothy Kilgallen, a top syndicated columnist, stopped in at PJ's frequently. Her husband, Dick Colmer, owned a nightclub called the Right Bank, a lively place with good music, fine food, and exotic women. Every Thursday night, Dorothy threw a party at the Right Bank. Other renowned columnists, as well as radio and television stars, often attended. These gatherings were not only fun, but they were also timely exposure for me and my art. On the West Coast, I had also begun to meet celebrities. With the North Beach area of San Francisco as my favorite hangout, I found companionship and stimulation at places like Vesuvius, where Luke Gibney, the great Irish artist, was the bartender. Another acquaintance who became a friend was Jack Kerouac, known as the king of the beatnik writers. Whenever he saw me coming into our favorite bars, he would yell a standard invitation to his friends by way of greeting me. Come on in and get drunk. All work and no play make Walter a dull boy. One of the most memorable evenings in North Beach was with lovely film actress Kim Novak. We had decided to spend the evening at the Sinaloa, a fashionable night spot where my good friend Ines Torres performed. After driving the car around the block for the third time in search of a parking place, I turned to Kim and said, "Enough of this." Halfway up Broadway between Grant and Stockton Streets was a narrow alley with an open driveway entrance. I swung up on the sidewalk past a few clubs, a shoe shine stand, and some other small stores. Still driving on the sidewalk, I made a sharp right turn on the corner of Stockton, and went about 100 feet to park directly in front of the door of the Sinaloa. I left my side of the car and opened Kim's door to escort her into the club. Senora Garcia, the owner, welcomed us with a wonderful front row table. "Mama Garcia," I explained, "I had a problem parking my car." "Do not worry, Walter," she reassured me. "I have a boy who will take care of it." "Where is the car?" "Right at the front door," I replied. She called her employee, and the three of us walked to the front door. When she saw the car, she exclaimed, "You were not joking when you said you had a problem." Coming to my defense, Kim said, "But, Mrs. Garcia, it was the only vacant space that Walter could find." Shortly afterwards, we moved the car to a more appropriate spot so that Kim and I could enjoy the show. Few people realize that Kim Novak's talents included considerable artistic ability. While in her teens, she won a scholarship to the Chicago Art Institute. She allowed me to paint her, first as a child and then as the ravishingly beautiful adult she is now. She in turn portrayed me as a clown with 7 thorns, with the child painting of her as a puppet in the clown's hand. Fun as it was, I soon learned that notoriety has its price. When one becomes famous, he is also more vulnerable. Throughout the first year after our divorce, Barbara and I remained friends and mutually committed to Susan's well being. And there is Kim Novak painting Walter Keane. Hanging on the wall next to Walter is a painting he did of Kim as a child. He also painted Kim as a beautiful actress. Yeah, you said that. Oh no. Oh dear. Barbara even found a little cottage that would serve as a studio for me closer to our family home in Berkeley. I liked the house and the locale immediately, so Barbara made curtains and furnished it for me. I was pleased with her gestures and glad to be nearer to our daughter. I saw Susan frequently, either in Berkeley or at my cottage. Barbara's remarriage in 1955 changed our amicable relationship. The court had decreed that I should have Susan every other weekend and for half of the major school vacations. Barbara and her new husband Jim refused to honor this decree. One Friday, I arrived at my former home to pick up Susan for the weekend. Jim answered the door, took a look at me, and slammed the door in my face. Shocked and concerned, I paused for a moment and then rang the bell continuously. Jim reappeared at the door to shout, "Get off my property." He was referring to my former home. On the following Monday, I consulted my attorney, who served Barbara with a warrant for noncompliance with the court ordered visitation rights. I took Barbara to court repeatedly. Each time the judge chastised her. She, however, persisted in denying my rights. I had to pay court costs and attorney fees for both Barbara and myself. I had to face the facts of my situation. I had become a well known artist and a drinker. My name was linked with other notable personalities, often because we were observed at all hours of the day and night in fashionable restaurants or bars. Here I was, a single male parent in the 1950s, living an unsettled existence on two coasts and several continents. All I wanted were my rightful visitation privileges with my daughter. Neither my wife nor the judge seemed to take me seriously. I was truly perplexed and dejected. In the late spring of 1955, I returned from Paris to participate in the annual outdoor exhibition of the Society of Western Artists, held at the aquatic park in the front of Maritime Museum near San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf. I was showing my work from Berlin and Paris, as well as the paintings of the lost children in Hong Kong, Tahiti, and Chinatown in San Francisco. As I chatted informally with visitors to the exhibit, I was approached by a slender young blonde woman. Her left hand was poised over her chin meditatively. Her face was cradled between her index finger and thumb. The other three fingers were draped in front of her long, thin neck. As she spoke, her soft voice, punctuated by a slight southern accent, was muffled by her hand. My name is Margaret, she began. I know who you are, and I love your paintings. You are the greatest artist I have ever seen. Pausing a moment, she gave me an appraising glance. Then she continued, You're also the most handsome. Without moving her hand from her face, the young woman spoke of the emotional impact and vibrant colors of my paintings. The children in your paintings are so sad. It hurts my eyes to see them. Your perspective, the magnificent colors and textures, and the sadness you portray in the faces of the children make me want to touch them. I eyed her suspiciously and responded vehemently, No, never touch any of my paintings. She apologized and added that on two occasions she had tried to paint in oil, but that neither work was very good. She explained that she had limited background in art. She had painted cartoons on neckties to earn spending money. With that, she left, and I forgot about her for the afternoon. At closing time, however, she reappeared, offering to help me pack up. Always anxious for assistance with the cumbersome paintings, I accepted. We loaded the easels and paintings into my car. I then invited several of the other exhibiting artists to join me at Vesuvius for a few drinks. I asked Margaret if she would like to accompany us. She readily agreed. At Vesuvius, Luke was tending bar, so Margaret met him first. Next, I introduced her to the rest of the bar crowd, most of whom were successful or aspiring painters. Bob Watson was there. He had already hit the big time with exhibitions in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Also present were Estelle Chavez, who had painted with me in my studio, and Bruce Belfour, one of my great pals. After each of us had bought a round of drinks, the group went to a little Italian restaurant on the corner. On the way, I introduced Margaret to Jack Kerouac. He was coming out of the City Lights bookstore. I said to her, If you like, I will buy you one of Kerouac's books after dinner. As we entered the Buon Gusto restaurant, Don Kingman, the Chinese artist, whom I particularly respected, was leaving. He acknowledged us by saying, Great place to eat, a five-course meal for 65 cents. We did have a superb dinner along with a couple of Chivas Regals and several bottles of Dago Red. By this time, the party began growing loud and wild. Everyone toasted everyone else, praising each other as the greatest artist of the age. It was already 10 o'clock. Margaret whispered to me, Let's go. It's so noisy in here. She had to repeat herself several times for me to hear her. She continued to keep her hand in front of her mouth. Finally, I replied, Not yet. It is too early. This goes on half the night. An hour later, the party moved back to Vesuvius, where Margaret ordered a liqueur and I a whiskey. She raised her glass as if to toast. After this, home, she said decidedly. Once outside, she suggested we go to my studio. I countered by suggesting a visit to the Tin Angel to hear Bob Scobie and Kid Ory, or to Pier 23 to hear Bert Bales play the piano. We will do that another time, she said. Now let's go to your place. While helping me to unload my paintings and carry them into my studio, she commented on my king-size bed. When we had finished, she excused herself and returned in a few minutes, wearing only a small towel. This guy is a fucking champ. All the women want him. Oh, I think I went one page too many. Angered and yet aroused. He's angered by a nude woman standing in front of him. Angered and yet aroused by her aggressiveness, I commented, When I make love with a woman, I unwrap her. By then, however, things had already gone too far. In the midst of our love-making, she startled me by getting up abruptly to demand the time. I informed her that it was 3 a.m., to which she exclaimed, "My God, I must leave at once. I have a husband and a daughter at home." Disgusted with the whole thing, I remarked sarcastically, "Quite a set of morals you have." She replied, "It is not immoral to sneak out to be with a friend. It is just an opportunity to grow. There is nothing wrong with it." Dumbfounded, I said nothing. How strange, I mused, that she considers me a friend after a few short hours of superficial intimacy. As she left, she turned to me and said, "You are the greatest lover in the world." Again, I was speechless. This experience had been too strange even for an eccentric artist. What had Margaret really hoped to achieve with all of her flattery? Was she as insecure as she seemed? I resolved to forget the whole incident. 2 weeks later, about midnight, there was a knock at my door. Already in bed and nearly asleep, I got up to find out who was calling so late. Outside my door, I found the slim, frail woman of the previous fortnight standing in the dim light of the porch with a suitcase. Her left hand covered her chin as before. She looked pathetic. For the moment, I was unable even to recall her name. "What do you want?" I demanded. She answered that she wanted to move in with me. I told her that she must be mad. "Come in out of the cold," I said. I got her a blanket and a pillow and told her that she could sleep on the couch. In the morning, with her left hand still covering her mouth, she told me that she had left her husband and daughter to live with me. "No way," I replied. I told her of a vacant apartment nearby. She said that she wanted to be my disciple and that she wanted me to teach her to paint. I laughed, telling her that I had no time for her. In fact, I informed her I was already running late for an early morning appointment with my attorney concerning visitation rights with my daughter. Putting on my jacket to leave, I asked her why she always kept her left hand by her mouth. "There," she exclaimed, removing her hand. I still did not understand. "Can't you see?" she shouted. "See what?" I questioned. "I have buck teeth and no chin." I could not help laughing. "It is not funny," Margaret cried. I did not mean for it to be funny," I said. "Please sit down for a minute. Margaret, this is 1955 AD. If a person is bothered by what you call buck teeth and no chin," there's some paintings, the beatniks and Vesuvius. "Bothered," she interrupted. "All my life I have looked like a freak. When I look in the mirror, I hate me. When my mother had callers, she hid me in the closet. You better believe I am bothered by it." I smiled patiently. "Margaret, I know a fine doctor who can rebuild your face. He will straighten your buck teeth and give you a chin. Doctors can work miracles these days. I've always felt that I had to hide my face from people," she confided. Hiding is psychological," I pointed out. "It is a problem in the mind, not in the face. Now, if you will excuse me, I must hurry to my appointment. Help yourself to more coffee." Later in the morning, I returned to my studio to find Margaret sitting barefoot and cross legged on the floor with her left hand to her face and a cup of coffee nearby. "Your paintings, I feel a part of them," she said, pointing to the waif. I responded by stating that I had started the waif in France in 1947 and finished it in Berkeley in 48. "That waif could be me," she offered, "or I could be the waif. The other great painting, the one you call Alone, even your title tells its own story." "A painting does not need words," I answered. The work speaks for itself." I painted Alone after my wife Barbara divorced me. I felt very much alone. I was alone. She continued, "I love the way you think and talk. Even when you make coffee, I hear you singing. You seem to be a happy man." I did not reply. Instead, I showed her photos of more than 60 other paintings of the lost children whom I had painted on my worldly travels. I told her that many additional works were in my studio on my barge in Sausalito. In New York or in my storeroom, she raved on and on. As I put on the coffee water in the kitchen, I wondered if I could remake this girl into a whole person. She was heavy on my mind. In many ways, she reminded me of the lost children I was portraying in my life's work. This waifish girl was like a canvas. I wondered if I could color her into a complete person. And that's going to be it for now. Fuck you.